It's Feisty Fridays again, and I've got my summer nails done. If it doesn't show well in the video, they are bright neon because that is the color of my dragon boat team. And yes, I am a dragon boater and I'm competitive. And I got a bronze medal this last weekend, and I always like to align my aesthetic to my team. So, you're just going to have to enjoy the neon. It's a good thing I talk with my hands, so it's not wasted even when I'm on video. This week, I've been thinking quite a bit about professionalism, or I would argue the lack thereof of professionalism. And I think we really actually need to have a serious conversation about the word professionalism. Honestly, for me, the word doesn't work anymore. And I think it's become one of the most misused, and I would also say weaponized words. I know I've weaponized it. I've said, well, that's not professional. And in reality, who am I to talk about professionalism? I don't think we know what it means. And, before you panic at the thought of Amber's throwing the word professionalism under the bus, let me be clear. I'm not anti-professional. Just don't think we do it the way the word ought to mean. I believe deeply in accountability. I believe in respect in the workplace, integrity, both having it and giving it. I also, because I'm a project management professional, believe in preparing well and in emotionally regulating yourself. I think these are key aspects to leadership and professionalism. But that's not what most organizations mean when they say be professional. In my experience, a lot of time, what I think be professional really means in an organization is don't challenge me, don't make me uncomfortable, don't you dare show emotion, or I'm going to weaken my impression of you. And whatever you do, don't say the thing that everyone is quietly thinking. Because why? Because that would be unprofessional. Because if you do any of those things publicly, in some organizations, they say you're being unprofessional. I've watched this happen for years. In my own experience, I have been led to tears in moments in work. But because I have let that show, I've been considered unprofessional. How is being emotional and showing up in a room with that much depth of emotion, how is that automatically unprofessional? Now, I'm not suggesting I was blubbering and and being all, emotionally reactive. I just simply mean in conversation and in meetings, the crack of my voice, the moisture in my eye. This shows, at least in my case, deep intentionality, deep connection to what's being said and what's being talked about. It's not unprofessional necessarily. And I think when someone raises concerns in a meeting, when someone pushes back at an organization saying, hey, I think you're asking us to do too much, I think we're feeling burnt out. I think the way this culture is feels toxic to my life. I think if we don't say anything, it's at the expense of not being professional that we're quiet. But a lot of organizations don't want us to behave that way. And you know what I've also witnessed, and I have become this, is suddenly the person who is waving the flag becomes the problem, and the organization doesn't want to take responsibility for that. You know, the dysfunction in organizations doesn't come from the person naming it. The dysfunction comes from the dysfunction, the systemic issues at play. That's where the dysfunction is, not in the person who finally has said enough is enough. And thoughtfully, perhaps with emotion, they speak out. That isn't unprofessional. Some of the most emotionally immature behavior I have ever witnessed in organizations was delivered by people trying to keep the peace, be calm, and be polished. I wouldn't say it was professional. It was manipulative. It was still theater. And it was denying the fact that humans, we're smarter than that. Humans in a work environment, we feel the passive aggressive nature of the way you're speaking to us. We feel the exclusion. We feel the manipulation that you're using and the public image management that's happening. Humans in your work environment, in organizations, know that you are playing politics, but you call it being professional. It's human behavior that gets all wrapped up in polished corporate language. But you know what? Just because it looks professional, just because we've been fed this idea that professionalism has to look that way, we tolerate it. I have tolerated it. I've been kicked out of a so-called professional environment because I was the one asking questions that made people feel uncomfortable. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I've also been the agitator. I've been the one to react unprofessionally. And I'm not suggesting that we're not capable of that too. I just mean professionalism and emotional maturity are not the same thing. And honestly, I think historically, professionalism, I don't think it was ever neutral. I don't think it's ever been neutral, and I don't think it ever will be neutral. I believe that the Industrial Revolution required most of us to assimilate as professionals, to look at how we can be together, united, and act or behave in the same way. I think we've been code switching, suppressing parts of ourselves, shrinking emotionally, and making ourselves easier for the systems and the organizations we work for to tolerate. And that is what has to change. Even more so because of automation and technology progressing, doing the work that perhaps we have been doing but won't be doing much longer in the future. We need to redefine professionalism. And it doesn't mean that I want to work in a place that's emotionally chaotic. Arguably, that's not safe either. I'm talking about self-regulation mattering deeply, but regulation not immediately meaning suppression. I have a friend. I love her dearly. She loves, maybe you have a friend like this too. She loves to spin with me about all the things that make her feel psychologically unsafe in her environment. But when asked or pushed, even by me, to go and speak to someone who could actually change that environment, she never speaks out. Not even anonymously. Doesn't even fill out a comment card. Doesn't do any, simply vents to me and ignores it and does nothing about it. I love her dearly, but I think that's unprofessional. I think it's grossly unprofessional because she's regulating herself in a suppressive way. And I think there's a huge difference between regulating your nervous system while having a hard conversation and feeling like you're not allowed to express discomfort because it threatens the organizational culture. If my friend doesn't feel safe enough to even anonymously give that feedback, how is she ever going to learn to grow and integrate and be a real, genuine person at home, at work, at play, wherever? Because those being professional and hiding your true emotions, they're diametrically opposed to one another. And I think a lot of leaders are still really fixated on the obedience side of professionalism. I think many of us have been meant to be more active, be more provocative, but we have been afraid because obedience, quite frankly, is easier to manage. And I think the organizations that we work with and for want easier management. But real leadership, it's hard. It's hard. And organizations that want to do real leadership require honest conversations. It means we're going to have to repair things. It means we're also going to have to set boundaries and we're going to have to move boundaries. We're going to have directive conversations and we're going to have to cultivate the ability to stay present while tensions rise. That That's what professionalism should look like. Not ignoring how you feel, but finding a constructive professional way to share it. It's not about being a robot. It's not about being obedient. It's not about faking that you're okay with it. It's not corporate theater. And I'm sick of corporate theater, and I'm a really good thespian in a corporate environment. But I don't think it's going to get us where we want to go, my friends. We need to be different. We need to think differently, and we need to behave in these worlds and these environments differently because work is demanding. And so many people that are performing in their workplaces, that version of themselves all day long, 8 to 10 hours, carefully edited, emotionally filtered. What about those that are constantly self-monitoring to avoid being perceived as too much? That was me. You know that that comes at a cost. When you do that for 8 to 10 hours a day, it disconnects you from yourself. It literally means that you begin to not feel you because you have to behave a certain way that isn't attached to you. And disconnected cultures, these are not healthy cultures. The healthiest leaders that I know, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of one of them. They are not the most polished people in the room. No, in fact, they're completely unpolished a lot of the time. And yet, they're the most congruent. Their values match their behavior. They are the same at home as they are in their work, as they are on a sports field, as they are in a bar or a restaurant. Their words match their decisions. And people trust them and trust those individuals particularly because that's what they are. They're consistent. And that is the kind of professionalism I want to cultivate. We need to redefine it. We need professionalism to stand for humanity, to be clear, to be regulated, of course. When the tears are coming, if we can't contain them and we are going to sob, like I might, be professional and say, you know what, I am overcome with emotion in this moment. I need a minute. Steal away. That's a professional way to be emotional. And that doesn't mean that when that person takes the moment, the rest of the room should throw them under the bus. No. They should be curious about when they come back, what really has affected them so deeply? I want to know. In today's world, I think this is going to be demanded of us because the pace of change, it's rampant. And ironically, I don't think professionalism is going to get us the whole way unless we radically change our definition of it. So let's think this week about how we can be radically transformed by the word professionalism. And let's make sure that we are thinking in terms of moving forward with purpose as professionals that are honest, that are genuine, that are ready to have the uncomfortable conversations sometimes, and that recognize the humanity is what really creates earnest, honest, feisty leadership. That's all for me this week. See you next Friday.